I've found through my clinical experience helping thousands of people drop weight over the last 15 to 17 years is that we drop weight in the opposite direction that we put it on. So if you put it on in your belly first, you guys, that's last to go. And you've got to make sure that you're committed all the way so that you can drain the stores that are in the belly. Remember, the belly fat is active. All that the belly fat wants to do is get fatter as fast as possible. If you only drop a portion of your excess fat weight, it's going to come back. It's like a tumor, and all it wants to do is grow. It's like a weed. If you only drop a portion of your excess fat weight, it's analogous to shaving the top off of a weed and leaving the root.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show.
Welcome to the Dr. Ashley Show. I'm Dr. Ashley, and today we are going to bust some myths around what increases fat burn and what decreases fat burn. There's so much information out there, telling us that there are specific activities and lifestyle habits and foods and supplements that can start or stop fat burn. So today I want to talk on that topic. I've shared this in lots of previous episodes about my background. I was a professional ballet dancer, and I was put in the field when I was really young, and I loved it, but my body just did not want to do what it was supposed to do. And I really struggled to stay as lean as I needed to be for the sport. And as a result, I did crazy things to try to keep the body fat percentage as low as possible. And despite that, I still was told that I was fat countless times. It's actually why I went on to earn my PhD in sports nutrition and chronic diseases, because I wanted to help people overcome the same challenges that I had, or with the ultimate goal of never experiencing the challenges that I went through. I studied exactly that. What happens when we chronically undereat? How do we drop weight in a healthy way that supports our metabolism? And then I also understood that 80% of the change comes from our mind. How do we drop weight mentally and emotionally through our habits and behaviors? And so I also studied that during my doctoral work. And as a part of my dancing career, before I went into this field and actually started to understand the process and help others overcome the challenges that I went through, man, I tried it all, especially when it came to trying to increase my body's ability to burn fat. I took supplements that they call, thermogenics, and those are things that are supposed to speed our metabolism, and they might be called Night Shred or Thermal Burn or Fire Ignite. And all those did was ignite heart palpitations, and they made me super sensitive to the sun. So I would go out in the sun and I'd get these major rashes all over my body. So I didn't stack any kind of wins with taking those thermogenic night shreds. I don't know why I say it like that, but it just seems like it should be said night shred. I would run on a treadmill with a sweatsuit on. And when you think sweatsuit, you're probably thinking like, the 80s sweatpants and shirt. But no, I mean like a sweatsuit. Basically like plastic wrap. If you can imagine that, it was plastic. And I would wear the pants and the jacket. I can't believe I'm telling you guys these stories. It's very embarrassing, but I didn't know what to do. And I was just fighting with all my might to try to achieve what my instructors required of me. And so I would wear that plastic outfit, and then I would go run on the treadmill, and I would just dehydrate the heck out of myself. Not burn any fat off, but man, I was sweaty. And so I thought that I was being productive and effective. And instead I was just dehydrating myself and leading to more heart palpitations. Then I would try all the skinny tea, and the skinny tea just landed myself in the bathroom on the toilet. You can imagine that. And I just see these ads out there targeting people, and I just feel terrible about it. And then there's this, ads that say, eat these specific foods, and then you follow along in these really lengthy commercials, and at the end, they're like, it's bananas burn belly fat. Like, no, that's a great alliteration, but that's all that it is. And bananas, you guys, do not help you burn belly fat. Either do raspberries. It's just so random. I want you to understand that there's no magic pill when it comes to burning belly fat or any type of fat if you want that fat off in a sustainable manner. But there are safe and effective methods and steps that you can take to help your body burn fat more efficiently. And there are likely things that you are doing right now that you can stop that are probably getting in the way. And that's what we're going to talk about today. First, before we dive in, I want you to understand what we're talking about when we're talking about fat burn. So when we say fat burn, we're talking about the process by which the body uses stored fat for fuel. Fat metabolism is basically the breaking down of triglycerides into their small parts. When they're broken down into their small parts, they then go into the mitochondria of the cell, and the mitochondria of the cell is the powerhouse of the cell. So these little tiny parts of this triglyceride. So think of a fat molecule, then it's in its triglyceride form, which is a glycerol background with 3 fatty acids, a glycerol backbone, basically, with 3 fatty acids. Then that's broken down into all its little parts, and then it goes into the mitochondria. And then the mitochondria break it down into energy, or ATP, and that's what we can use, and that's what we're talking about. So fat burn is an essential physiological process, and it occurs consistently and continuously throughout the body. But the rate varies, and the rate varies according to diet, according to physical activity, according to hormones, your age, genetics. Lots of different things impact your ability to burn fat for fuel and the speed at which your body does that. Optimizing fat burn is usually the primary goal for those of us interested in weight management, because in order to drop weight and keep the weight off, our body needs to be burning fat efficiently. So then, how do we enhance our body's ability to burn fat without taking nitrid? Well, the first thing that we can do is eat within or below our carbohydrate tolerance level. So I talk a lot about carbohydrates, and I'm not saying that they're evil or that you shouldn't consume any, but the reason why I talk about it is because carbs have the most profound stimulus on how we metabolize all other nutrients. If we eat above our carbohydrate tolerance level, then we actually switch off the fat burning ability, right? I want you to think that we flip off the switch to burning fat for fuel if we eat above our unique carbohydrate tolerance level. If you eat a breakfast that's high in sugar or high in carbohydrates, above your body's tolerance level of it, then you're not going to be burning fat throughout the day. It's going to be really tough. If you struggle with weight gain, if you have a lot of fat around the belly, if you have type 2 diabetes, if you're older, if you're not super active, then you can better bet that a high sugar or even high carb breakfast is not your friend, and it is not helping you in your body's ability to burn fat for fuel. Now, what's interesting and what I want you to understand is that when we consume carbohydrates, let's say you eat that breakfast of steel-cut oats and blueberries and vanilla yogurt, it goes through the gut, broken down into the bloodstream as sugar. The body can only tolerate about 1 to 2 teaspoons of sugar at any given time before it's toxic to the body. So what happens is the body goes and tells the pancreas to secrete insulin. Now, insulin, what it should do is it should unlock the muscle cells and let that energy flow in so you can use that for energy. Now, insulin, when it's secreted at higher levels than we really need or constantly high levels, and insulin's going to be secreted in that way if we're always eating above our carbohydrate tolerance level. Remember that carbs and insulin are linked together. In order to metabolize carbohydrates, we need insulin, but insulin is a fat storage hormone. Remember, its job is to unlock the muscle cells and let all that sugar flow in. It also helps us to store that sugar as fat. We want to eat foods that support a lower level of insulin, which means that we want to eat a diet that's a bit lower in carbohydrates. We all have a unique tolerance level of carbohydrates. So if you are super active and you earn your carbs, then you can consume more. But the majority of people who I speak to aren't in that camp. And so we really have to be aware of where our carbohydrates are coming from and how they impact the body. So if you're really interested in how the body is relating to foods, because we're all very unique, you could wear a continuous glucose monitor or a CGM. And that's actually what I'm wearing right now. And you probably can't see it. If you're watching this on YouTube, you might see this little circle here. And this is a CGM, which is basically a small device, and it implants into the skin. It's like a little thread that goes into the blood, and it will measure how my blood glucose responds to certain foods. So I wrote down some numbers because I think it is interesting. Now, we always want a healthy blood glucose level of around 80 to 100. Now, when you eat, it's obviously going to go up, especially if you eat carbohydrates. Your blood glucose level goes up, and then insulin goes up to meet it, and it brings it back down. So a good goal is to make sure that your blood glucose doesn't go above 140 after you eat. Anything above 140 kind of gets into danger zone. It's just not good. It's a stress to the body. It's a stressor. And if you constantly live up there, which is where, people who have type 2 diabetes, they're living above a value of 120 on a consistent basis. But a good goal is to not go above that 140. And really, ideally, you don't want to go above 110. So for me, I really want to achieve optimal wellness. I'm going to try to measure and make sure that what I eat doesn't pop up above 110 very frequently. So when I consume coffee in the morning with some heavy cream, my blood glucose goes up to about or stays around 88. I did an experiment and I took the kids to a ski trip. And I ate breakfast. I usually don't eat breakfast, but I ate breakfast with them because I knew I was going to be skiing all day. And I had coffee, salami, and a very small piece of banana bread. I mean, probably like a third of a piece of banana bread. And my glucose went up to 127. The next day, I decided, well, let me see what happens without the banana bread. And I had coffee and salami, and my blood glucose stayed the same at 88. So what I want you to also understand is that protein and healthy fats really don't spike your blood glucose. So you can see that when I had the salami with the coffee, it was at 88. And when I had the coffee by itself, it was at 88. So what popped it up there? It was the banana bread. And it popped it up above the 110, which was really my target. Now, an interesting thing is if I just ate the banana bread, it probably would have gone up to 175 or 180. And that on my body is like, it's going to stress the adrenals. It's not going to be where I want to be. So another thing that I did was I was skiing all day and I went into the lodge and I was with my kids and my daughter said, "Oh, Mom, can I have this cookie?" They have these delicious cookies all laid out. You can imagine ski lodge, cookies, hot chocolate. And she's like, "Mom, can I have this cookie?" So in order to save her health, I ate half of it. And I ate half of it. It was just the cookie. And what did my blood glucose do? Shot up to 173. If I had eaten something like a piece of salami beforehand, if I had eaten something with it, preferably before you eat the sugar, it would have blunted the spike. Another interesting thing that a lot of us don't recognize is that mints actually have a lot of sugar. So on the drive from the airport into the ski hill, the taxi cab had some mints, like the wintergreen circular mints. And I had one and I knew that it was just sugar, but I was amazed. Blood glucose spiked up there to 170 because of that little darn mint. Definitely not worth it. But I just do think it's amazing and interesting to understand that if you eat sugar all by itself, it's going to spike it. If you have breakfast that is toast and oatmeal or Honey Nut Cheerios, man, it's going to spike it. And that is a stress. Now, and a lot of people say, gosh, it's normal for your blood glucose to go up and down. It is totally normal. It's a normal process. Insulin is not terrible. It's you want to have insulin, but you want to have the lowest amount of it possible. And you don't want to have these extreme highs and lows. So understanding your body in that way is important. Hey, really quickly, if you feel you need additional support for your metabolism and blood sugar levels while dropping weight or maintaining your weight loss, I created a capsule just for that. It's called GlucoCut Plus and contains industry-leading ingredients to help burn fat, support your thyroid, and maintain lean muscle mass. Visit dr.ashleywellness.com or click the link in the description if watching this on YouTube and use code ASHLEY10 for 10% off your first purchase or 20% off your first subscription order plus free shipping. And enjoy a 30-day money-back guarantee. Back to the show. Number 2, so what we're talking about, because I know I just shared a lot of stories, we're talking about things that can increase your body's ability to burn fat. So eat within your carb tolerance level, and you could drop into ketosis if you want. Ketosis is basically when you consume less than 10 to 20 grams of carbs a day. Your insulin levels are pretty darn low, but it is more complicated than that. However, you when you're in ketosis are burning ketones, which is basically comes from fat. Now, people will say, I'm in ketosis and I'm not losing weight. Why not? Well, in order to lose weight, if that's the goal, you need to have a bit of a calorie deficit. So you can be eating all this steak and all this butter and all this cream, but if you're eating more calories than your body needs, you'll still be burning fat for fuel, but it's not going to be the stored stuff. Let me try to explain it this way. I want you to imagine that the leanest person has 70,000 calories worth of fat on their body. The leanest person has 70,000 calories worth of fat on their body. If you are struggling with excess fat weight, that means that you got even more of that energy. You're just holding on to stores of energy. And I explain it like those fat stores are locked away in a freezer. Like imagine a big deep freeze and it's got a padlock on it. And so what we're wanting to do is we're wanting to open up the padlock so that we can use that energy. So in order to open up the padlock, we need to eat underneath our carb tolerance level so that insulin isn't high there. I want you to imagine that insulin locks up the padlock. It can lock it up. So you want insulin to be underneath there. You want your blood glucose levels to be underneath so that we can open up the padlock. And then you need a little bit of a calorie deficit so that it needs to get in there to the freezer store. You can be in ketosis and be burning all fat, but if it's all the stuff that's ingested, the body has no need to tap into the stuff that's stored. I hope that clarifies why people can be in ketosis or follow the carnivore diet, but they're not dropping weight. The good thing about following a reduced carbohydrate diet is that it does trigger different hormones that allow cravings and hunger to go away. So in general, if you want to burn fat for fuel, you need to have a little bit of a calorie deficit if you want it to be the stored stuff on the body. You want to eat, if you're just starting in your weight loss process, about 1 gram of protein per pound optimal body weight. If you're a PhD client listening to this and you're eating less than that, do not fret. You will not be dropping muscle mass. Our coaches have helped to figure out the amount of protein that you need to maintain muscle, but drop the most fat most efficiently and effectively. That protein ideally would be coming from animal protein because your body absorbs it more readily. You'll be consuming lots of healthy fats, veggies, full fat dairy, berries. There was a study recently looking at MCT oil and found that those who consumed more MCT oil or over olive oil actually had a higher energy expenditure, meaning that their metabolism was burning more energy and they had reduced cravings. So you could consider adding a little bit of MCT oil into your diet. Now, please note, and you're going to be very glad that I gave you this tip, MCT oil can cause diarrhea and GI distress. If you start with too much too soon, you're going to be like, what the heck just happened? So if you do incorporate some MCT oil, make sure that you start small, maybe 1 teaspoon or so. Number 3, another thing that can help to increase fat burn would be intermittent fasting. I did a whole episode on intermittent fasting where I dive into the science. So if you really want to geek out on intermittent fasting, go find that episode. But basically you want to have about at least 12 hours between your dinner meal, the last meal of the previous day, and the first meal of the following day. So between dinner and breakfast, for example, you want to make sure that you have 12 hours in there because usually it's some period of between the 8 hours and 12 hours of not eating where the padlock opens up and you can start to burn that stored stuff as the main type of fuel. Another thing you can do to increase fat burn is physical activity. So specific types. It could be walking or hiking, and you can do that in a fasted state. So in a fasted state, nothing's available but the stuff that's in the freezer stores. So you can unlock that padlock and access that and start burning it. Strength training is known to decrease body fat percentage while increasing muscle mass, and you can consider doing that in a fasted state as well. That's going to unlock the padlock and let you access the freezer stores. Now, I will say there is a bit of research showing that working out in a fasted state doesn't actually reduce weight, but who knows what the participants are doing the rest of the day, if they're over consuming their calories or what's happening. But we do know that it does increase the body's ability to burn fat for fuel just because there's nothing else for it to burn, so it becomes pretty efficient at that. Research also shows that doing exercise that includes aerobic and resistance training at the same time is helpful. This would be like a burn boot camp, fit body boot camp, F45. I really like to go to F45 personally, but in that workout, it's circuit training and some of it's cardio and other is resistance and lifting weights. That combo seems to enhance the body's ability to burn fat. And then high intensity interval training is another one. This would be like, I like to use the example of a stationary bike, but you could do this through running or swimming or whatever it might be. But if you were on a stationary bike, it would be warming up easy for 5 minutes and then sprinting as hard as you can just for 10 to 20 seconds easy. Resting for about 40 seconds. So it's like a 1-to-2 ratio of work to rest. If you work for 20 seconds, rest for at least 40, and then push again 20 seconds on, and then rest for at least 40. And you do that about 10 to 12 times and cool down. The whole thing will only take you 25 minutes and you'll be done. Now, if that seems daunting and overwhelming to you, do it 4 times and then cool down. But any bit is better than nothing. And then reducing stress, reducing cortisol. Cortisol is going to inhibit the body's ability to burn fat. Getting adequate sleep. When you sleep, your body actually gets into a state where it can utilize fat and help to support a really healthy metabolism. And then there's also a lot of literature supporting hydration and drinking optimal levels of water. I'd say at least 64 ounces of water a day helps the body's ability to burn fat. So before we get into the things to stop doing that might be inhibiting your body's ability to burn fat, let's talk about the myths around it. So we have this myth that we can spot reduce, that, gosh, I just want to increase the fat burn around my belly. That's what I would like to do. But unfortunately, we can't do that. You can't spot check. Your body, I've found through my clinical experience helping thousands of people drop weight over the last 15 to 17 years, is that we drop weight in the opposite direction that we put it on. So if you put it on in your belly first, you guys, that's last to go. And you've got to make sure that you're committed all the way so that you can drain the stores that are in the belly. Remember, the belly fat is active. All that the belly fat wants to do is get fatter as fast as possible. If you only drop a portion of your excess fat weight, it's going to come back. It's like a tumor, and all it wants to do is grow. It's like a weed. If you only drop a portion of your excess fat weight, it's analogous to shaving the top off of a weed and leaving the root. So you want to make sure that you go all the way. Then we're told fat burning supplements, those thermogenics, are going to help you. The night shred supplements, they don't really help. They might have a modest positive impact in the weight arena, but not anything when it comes to long-term sustainability. And then we're told that there are certain foods that help to burn fat, and that's really bogus information as well. All right, so what are the things that stop fat burn? Well, overeating, not having a calorie deficit in there if you want to unlock the freezer stores. Eating a high carb breakfast is going to stop fat burn. Any kind of sugary foods, highly palatable foods, sugar sweetened drinks and sauces, those are going to knock you out of fat burn. If you eat a lot of processed foods, that's actually linked to insulin resistance. And when we have insulin resistance in there, oftentimes we have too much insulin floating around in the blood, and it's like this constant person who goes in and locks up the freezer stores of your stored fat. The insulin's just always going around making sure that your stored fat is locked away with this really strong padlock. So I hope that makes sense. Consuming inadequate protein can help to minimize muscle mass and really pull on your muscle mass levels. And when you got low muscle mass, it's going to be harder to burn fat for fuel. Consuming alcohol. I did an entire episode on how alcohol works in the body. And the short of it is that alcohol goes to the liver, and the liver is in charge of fat burn. And it just blunts the process. It slows it. One drink will knock you out of fat burn for 4 to 8 hours. And an increase of those shots or drinks will knock you out of fat burn exponentially. So if you want your body just to be a revving engine of fat burn, you really don't want to consume alcohol. If you do want to consume alcohol, your better bet is going to be some kind of unsweet wine or hard hard liquor, and you really want to stay away from the sweet drinks. But no matter what type of alcohol you consume, it does blunt fat burn. Participating in chronic cardio like marathon running, distance running, getting on the elliptical machine or the Stairmaster and doing that for 45 minutes to an hour a day, that's not going to help you burn fat. It's actually going to increase stress and put fat in the belly. I was talking to Dr. Sean O'Mara. If you don't follow him, he's a great person to follow. And he was talking about visceral fat, the belly fat. We're both obsessed with visceral fat and helping people get rid of it because it is like kryptonite. And he was talking about someone and he was helping them reduce their belly fat through all the things that we do at PhD, limiting or removing processed foods, reducing carbohydrates in general, cutting out alcohol, sprinting more, doing all the things I've just shared with you. And this fellow was working with him and he was doing all the things, and Dr. Sean O'Mara was like, your belly fat's just not reducing in the way that I would expect. We're doing all these things. What is your exercise like? Are you still running a lot? And he goes, yes, I'm just addicted to running. I love it so much. I really don't want to give it up. And he goes, look, you're a part of this study. You've got to give it up because you said that you would. And he's like, okay. So he went more toward the sprinting and lifting weights, and he gave up the longer distance running, and he dropped all the rest of his belly fat. So exercise really is like a bell-shaped curve. If you don't do anything, it's not good and you're not going to get the good benefit. But if you do too much of it, the same thing occurs. So, I was a professional ballet dancer. And then after I gave that up, I thought I had to exhaust my body somehow. Like it couldn't just be here and not moving all the time. And so I started to get a little bit obsessed with cycling, and I would ride my bike, road ride. And I was pretty darn fast. They called me Pink Death back in the day. I'm serious. But anyway, I would ride my bike 250 miles a week. I was on that thing all the time. And you would think that I was so lean and in shape, but I just kept putting on fat. And it was just all in my belly and my lats. And I was just inflamed and obviously injured all the time. So really, too much of a good thing is not good, right? Poor sleep is going to reduce fat burn, which I talked about, and then being dehydrated. If you're not drinking, it's going to blunt your body's ability to store fat. So I hope that you got a lot of great value from this episode. You now understand the things you can start doing to increase fat burn and especially open up the freezer stores of the stored fat that you've got on your body. You understand now, the myths around burning fat, and you also understand the things that you can stop doing. So if you are listening to this on a podcast platform, please leave a review. And if you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe and leave a comment below. Let me know if anything surprised you. What do you think you do that increases fat burn or might stop fat burn? Share below. Share with the community. We're all learning together. Also, if you're watching this on YouTube, remember to check out the description. There's a link in there that talks about Dr. Ashley wellness supplements, specifically the electrolyte mix and glucocut, which helps to stabilize your blood sugar levels, which in turn will help you increase your body's ability to burn that stored fat for fuel. Remember, you've got to step up to make the change. Lead with your heart, train your mind, and do not negotiate with your body. I'll see you next time.